According to utilitarianism, the action that is the right action is the one that produces the most good and the most happiness for the largest amount of people. It's about maximizing the good and happiness for everyone, including ourselves, and that the morally right action is generally what will produce the most good and the most happiness for the largest number of people as an outcome. Well, utilitarianism does not single anyone out or put any person above anyone else. The moral theory of it is that everyone is equal. If the focus was just on oneself, it would be considered egoism, so it wouldn't be equal. Utilitarianism is actually quantitative. It's based on numbers. It's not qualitative. So it's based on the effect of the largest number of people, not based on the type of people like age, race, or social class, anything like that, or status. The idea of utilitarianism makes me think of something affecting our world today, and there may be two very different perspectives when it comes to utilitarianism, and that's face masks. Yeah, I can't seem to help but thinking about how face mask mandates have affected the happiness of people, and maybe even by more significant numbers than we can actually figure out. If we take into consideration, too, the people of the future, including the people in the world right now, if this really does continue over any number of years, who knows how it's going to affect social interactions and happiness in people, or levels of mental health and depression. So the question is, based on the thinking of a utilitarian, do we have the obligation to act and publicly mask up, or not to act and to avoid wearing masks in public? So to act or not to act, or to mask or not to mask, that's the question. Act utilitarianism means that in any given situation, we should do what is necessary to produce the greatest amount of good and happiness for the greatest number of people in that moment. So the view of an act utilitarian would be to wear a mask in public. The belief is that it will help protect people from spreading sickness, mainly meant for COVID-19, of course. The idea is that it will reduce the spread of illness and create less mortality rates and save lives. Even though it's not completely clear on how effective the masks might or might not be, and even though people may still contract or spread the virus, probably unknowingly, of course, using a face mask will ultimately make people feel like they're doing their part to resist illness or to stop the spread of the illness, thus creating an increased level of happiness and good in a larger number of people. An act utilitarian bases the behavior of acting off of the current act or the situation to create the greatest good and happiness for the majority within the moment or as a result of that act. The rule utilitarianism, on the other hand, a rule utilitarianism allows us to avoid some acts that may create happiness in the short term if avoiding the short-term happiness maximizes happiness for a larger amount of people in the long term. So a rule utilitarian for this example would choose not to wear a mask in public. Why not? Because they take it a step further in the direction of maximizing the benefits of good and happiness for the future and not just for the specific act in the moment. This might seem contradictory at first, given the last views I mentioned of the act utilitarians, but to avoid the necessity of always having to have a mask on hand to be in any public space would increase happiness in many people. In addition to this, though, there is the likelihood that the innate ability of the body, of the natural human body, to adapt to changes in our environment and to develop immunities would not be hindered. So the body's ability to fight off new and existing illnesses would continue to naturally develop, and immunities would increase over the course of time, as they have for a considerable number of years. with other illnesses. Just like when the English first came to America, many native people died because they did not have any immunities to the English illnesses. But over time, they eventually began to adapt, and their immunity levels increased. It's just a well-known historic example of how the human body has the ability to adapt. People might not necessarily get the feeling that they're doing something in the moment like they do by wearing a mask, but they would be contributing to the greater good by increasing the level of immunity in the human body over the course of time. People will continue to be affected by various different illnesses, which will still lead to the death of some people, and they might be people that are at higher risk or less capable of adapting. However, if we also want to consider the ability for people to see smiling faces of others and the effects that it might have on social interactions or the mental health of overall people, a rural utilitarian would still choose not to act or not to wear a face mask for the sake of protecting the mental health and the natural social interactions of people in their futures. They will still be able to live lives with the pleasures of normal social interactions, better mental health, and increasingly better immunities, especially over the course of time. An act utilitarian, on the other hand, since they may also be governed in a way that they have no choice but to act by wearing a mask, they might act in a way that they use a mask as a means to spread a message. For the sake of this, I had some masks made that say, "Symbol of silence," because regardless of what a person might think or believe about the concept, they become governed in a way that they cannot choose for themselves. So the people become silenced and no longer can make a choice.